we're in this kind of interesting time of complete separation from the ancient world. So now's the time to reimagine actually what can that relationship be like. How has song been such a vital part of our connection process and our allegiance to the land? And that's a really powerful idea if we're able to start to kind of connect in with what does that as a prayer, what does music as a prayer, and how can we use our folk songs and adapt because they've been secularized so much, but actually start to think about them as a means to communicate and to tune in, as kind of blueprints, as maps, as guidance, as orientation to our own personal, individual senses of correspondence and journeys into loving nature, and also duty of responsibility and care that comes with that.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with me, Dan Burgess. The story of Spaceship Earth is simple. We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. Like a spaceship, we have a finite amount of supplies with an intelligent operating system called nature, which keeps everything replenished as long as we all respect it and participate wisely. In this podcast, I'm in conversation with folk involved in regenerating life, shifting consciousness and reimagining how we can live more beautifully and peacefully. I talk with artists, writers, activists, designers, adventurers, healers, farmers, creative mavericks, and more. Their stories invite us to participate in the co-creation of life-sustaining cultures, in service to life, becoming crew on Spaceship Earth.
Greetings, Earthling. Welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast. This is Dan, your host. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first visit checking out the Spaceship Earth podcast, welcome. Thanks for checking us out. We hope you'll enjoy the ride. First up, before we get cracking on this brilliant conversation with Sam Lee, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have flipped the paid subscription to the Spaceship Earth podcast. In our last episode, we announced this intention this year to try and open up listener support. It's our 6th year, and we really need the support of our listeners this year to build the momentum around this podcast, to increase the releases and expand the writing on the Substack and offer up our community offerings. So it's an experiment, and we went live with that after the last episode, and a bunch of you have committed to the yearly payment. The cost of a pint a month, about £7. And we're really grateful to those of you that have done that. It's massively helpful. It's a start to trying to find a way to sustain the time and cost it takes to run and offer out the Spaceship Earth podcast. So thank you to you who have done that, and we're so grateful for that. Really appreciate your belief and commitment in what we're trying to do here. But we need lots more of you. So if you like what you're hearing here, we've also moved, the nearly 100 episodes of the podcast onto Substack now. So there's tons of back catalogue, and they're if I say so myself, they're fairly timeless conversations. A lot of these, because we're working and exploring ideas and that really are for these times. So yes, if you would like to support the podcast, please go to the becomingcrew.substack.com and you can find the subscription that works for you. The podcast will remain free to access on all podcast platforms. But yeah, we really we really need your help to make this thing fly further this year. So thank you for that. So in this episode, I'm in conversation with Sam Lee. Now, Sam is a Mercury Prize nominated folk singer, a writer, a conservationist. He's a song collector. He's a promoter and organizer of extraordinary life-centered events. He is a activist, and you will see Sam in all kinds of championing all kinds of movements which are about protecting our living world, connecting us more deeply to this living world that we're part of. And yeah, I was so excited that Sam was up for joining me on this conversation. He has a new album coming out next month called Songdreaming. It's his 4th album. I've been a massive fan of Sam's work since he first started releasing music in 2012. His songs, many of his songs actually, have been sort of firmly in my repertoire. I've walked the landscapes around where I live, often with Sam's music. And I would say, yeah, there's something really... I think there's something really important in the work that Sam is bringing out into the world in these times. I would say his creativity is very much in service to life on this earth in these times we find ourselves in. He's someone that is just relentless in his efforts and his work to connect, to bring people together, to help us expand our understanding of this extraordinary living world that we're part of, and also to bring an awareness of what we're losing. And doing that through such beauty in the music and offerings that he creates and invites us into. I really enjoyed this conversation with Sam. It was a beautiful reminder of the power, potential, possibility of music and song in these times to help us feel the world around us differently and each other, to open us up to notice and connect with this extraordinary planet that we are part of in ways that feel so urgent in these times, and that we might struggle with through our sort of rational, logical ways of interacting with the world and all the shit that's going on right now. So yes, those of us with the gift of sonics and music, we need more of you as an antidote to these destructive times. So anyway, lots in this conversation. If you enjoy it, please let us know. Give it a share. Send it to someone you think will like it. All of this stuff matters now. These ideas. These conversations, because there's possibility. There is possibility in there is so much good things around us to engage with and gather round. So, if you don't know Sam's work, I really encourage you to check out his music and all the other great stuff he does. But yeah, let's cut to it. This is the Spaceship Earth podcast with Sam Lee. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
Sam, welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Where are you right now?
I am in my sitting room in Hackney in London, which is where I live.
Nice. And how are you showing up today or in this moment?
Well, it's bright sunshine. I'm going to try and go and swim in the local Lido straight after this. It's that Friday. It's the Friday feeling, end of the week. I got up at 6:00 this morning, so I've had a bit of a day already.
Nice. Yeah, nice. I had a I'm getting up about that time actually at the moment, and it's as the sort of dawn chorus is starting to kick in down here, and got a song thrush actually this morning. I was listening to. I did a little walk up, stroll up to the cemetery here just before I sat down to record with you, and this song thrush was doing its thing.
Great.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it's so nice, isn't it?
Yeah. So, thank you for making the time for this, and got a load of stuff I'd love to chat with you about. But I guess one of the questions I'm asking at the start of this year, to guess, is just to kick off really, was sort of, how would you describe the vibes on Spaceship Earth right now as you're experiencing it? Like, can you give a little summary of the sort of...
Oh, geez. It really depends on which news channel you dial into. There's loads of beautiful work going on, and, there's the local and there's the national and then there's the global. And I'm constantly surprised by where the successes are happening and nature is flourishing on this glorious planet that we are blessed to exist in and on. I'm also perpetually concerned about the massive sense of destruction and loss and the capitulation into just complete annihilism that is happening as well. So a bit of me is like, do you know what? Let's get rid of humans, sod human culture. It's really good, but it's had its time, and there are other things and there's a bit of me is like, okay, what do we save? And there's a bit of me is just like, have the wildest party you can possibly have right now, and stop getting hung up on your little woes. And there's also the kind of build resilience and community and bring joy and goodness into the world. And that's the predominant feeling for me generally.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's, before we set out, I'd say, I think I sense all of that in your work. I've been following your work since your first album, I think it was 2012, was it? And, I feel a lot of that in your, not just in your songs, but in, all of the extraordinary things that you're co-creating, offering out into the world, this kind of, this entanglement of all of this, all of this stuff, right? All of this, this grief and love and possibility and overwhelm. And I think that's why, I just mentioned on that, even just speaking to the news piece, like, I think what I find so difficult in our sort of mainstream narratives of what is happening in the world is the sort of lack of this, of the whole, of all this other. It is very, this sort of binary way of seeing the world and ourselves as part of it or not. And that's, for me, often that's what I find probably more overwhelming, is the lack of the opening up that I feel we need in these times to sort of consider multiple perspectives and ways of knowing, and of what is of how to perceive what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also something in there about the trust of what we received, and the legitimacy, and likewise the sense of what aren't we seeing as well, what don't we know, and what are we not being told, and what isn't getting the coverage, but actually is far more determining of what's to happen next. So there's that sense of, yes, how does one keep in touch with everything that is happening, and also yet is able to have a life and go to work and feed yourself and occasionally wash.
Yeah. It is. We're living in extraordinary times in every sense, and so I guess just first up, I just wanted to offer some appreciation for what you do and all the work that you've put out into the world, and you have sort of multiple threads and I think that's why I was really intrigued, and that's actually sort of a lot of what we explore in this podcast. This very sort of participative energy in the world, and you certainly, I mean, you're a songwriter, you're an artist, you're a storyteller, you're an activist, you bring people together. You're I'd call sort of like a radical conservationist in radical in all the right ways. And and you've got this new album coming out, which is your fourth album, which I really want to dig into. But just and I know you've talked a lot about different parts of your work on other podcasts, but just for, I think there's something about these threads, at least the way I see your work, that you have these different threads that sort of you're weaving into what you do. And I wonder whether you could just give a little bit of a backstory on just what, those elements and how they've come to be, and maybe how they're showing up now as we go into Songdreaming, which I'm sort of sensing is, again, a real sort of weave of all of your journeying in some ways, and really about this time. It feels very, to me at least, what I've heard of the album, it feels really sort of this moment. But anyway, is that
Yeah, thank you. It's a funny thing. I'm really aware of that. I'm not the young folky anymore. That 12 years ago, I released my first album when I wasn't very young then. But still, I was younger than most of the people in that genre. And 14 years later, I'm mid-life, mid-career, and I'm like, what has it become? What has it turned into? If you'll indulge me to kind of do a bit of self-reflection.
Yeah, please do. That's what we're here for.
And there's a bit of me that never wants to do that and indulge in such things. But I have made 4 albums which are representative of chapters of my life, as an album is. It's such a small little thing, only a few megabytes, yet it's a distillation of everything that is essential and vital in one's life at the time. If one is, being true to the artist brief. And my first album was my kind of, oh my God, I've discovered folk song, and I want to present my interpretation, my stamp, my understanding through sonic. And, I didn't really know much then about the song, but I was learning, but I was like, these are beautiful songs. And I realized, it's interesting which of the songs I gravitated towards, having the selection of hundreds of thousands of folk songs. And so it was about trying to decipher what the textual quality is of how one creates a record of something very old that feels of the now. And that's always been very important to me, always a sense of timelessness, yet also very much of the moment. I would hate to ever be thought of as a sort of cosplay reenactor type approach to this music. The second album was me having gone firmly into the song collecting and started to be out in the field and gathering the songs, and at the same time also trying to find a much more bold, creative way of presenting, a packaging, of interpreting, using a lot of instruments from other countries and cultures, and very tapestry-esque, very collage-esque as well, being a bit more sort of music concrete in its way, and jazz improvisation in that sense. That was an album called The Fade in Time. The first one was grand of its own. And then the last album that just came out just before COVID hit.
Oh, wow.
Old Wow. Yeah.
Beautiful album.
Well, thank you.
I listened to it this morning, actually, again. I just on my walk. You talk about that timeless bit. It is. I mean, you have this thing of back and forward. I don't know. That's what I get from.
Yeah. The concertinaing of time. And that's something I really enjoy playing with. How we can be transported, how time is not a linear thing, but actually circular. And that the ancient world that I am dealing is one of the key ingredients that I'm working with, but not the only one, is something that I'm always trying to animate up to be something that feels very present. And that feels like we're being sent back in time, but I think that's a bad language. That it's not we're being sent back in time. It's actually that the time that is no longer with us is able to be activated in such a way that it's more tangible. And I think we have a crisis of that in our society today, a disconnect from a quality of interconnectedness that we have always had as been part of humans. That's what makes us sort of brilliant and evolved species in that sense. Conscious and what happens in the kind of liminal subconscious as well. And Old Wow was about tapping into that, but also writing, started to lyrically write out of folk songs. It was an album very much about the kind of quality of spirituality within the songs, about the kind of memento moris and gratitude giving and ritual, and looking at how folk song has been sort of made captive and domesticized, and wanting to kind of do a bit of rewilding for folk songs. And allow them a sense of free-spiritedness. And so that's a kind of, triangulation. It's like, where does that lead to? Well, I mean, it became very clear while Old Wow was kind of being finished, that the environmental journey and movement was my cause. It has been, but suddenly there was Extinction Rebellion, there was Music Declares Emergency, and many other eruptions of communities gathering under a shared sense of determined change making. And I realized that, well, actually, that's what I'm an activist, an environmental nature activist, and music is my protest. But it's also that, that the folk songs hold something very powerful and essential within them that can guide us into a sense of awareness of what has been lost and what the impact of that is. So this new album is very much about nature. And I think most of my albums to come probably will be. I sort of found I've arrived at the place of what the rest of my life is going to be speaking about. So it was a very long answer.
No, it's beautiful.
We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. How bonkers is that? You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
If you'd like to support the running of the Spaceship Earth podcast, head over to our Substack and sign up. You'll get every episode straight to your inbox, weekly writing, plus other crew offerings. We're grateful for whatever you can give. Join us at becomingcrew.substack.com. I mean, from what I sort of feel through your music and what you're doing, but also sometimes I'm wondering whether it's the land coming, coming through you in some. There's a sort of and I mean, where I have got to on my journey through activism and climate action, environmental, the last couple of decades is we're in this relationship crisis. We're in a relationship with this living earth that and ourselves and each other, which is from this kind of this separation sort of narrative, but it's more of a relational. It's how we relate, how we perceive ourselves and this living world that's causing us to sort of behave and design and perpetuate kind of structures and behaviors that keep bringing life, destroying life itself. And so I am sort of really interested in how we relate to this to the world around us, but also how that the earth is wanting to maybe come through us as well. It's like, is this as a sort of open? I think it's kind of what we're being faced with, isn't it? It's a real paradigm shift of understanding life itself. And I sort of feel when I listen to your I often feel like there's things coming through your music and your songs that maybe you didn't even know they're coming through. And I know you have a very strong practice of walking and connection to the landscapes, and I'm imagining there's a whole dance that's going on as you're creating. I could be wrong, but
fags and booze mostly. That's what keeps me going.
After you've done the walk.
No mud, no lotus, as they say.
Yeah, Plum Village.
Yeah, quite right. Wonderful place. It's there is a great awakening that is happening. Is it happening fast enough? And are enough people aware of it and able to access it? I don't know. I'm very lucky as being a Brit in an amazing city. You're Bristol, right? It's like we're in the heartlands of some of the most extraordinary communities of forward thinking, but people who understand what is sacred and what is vital, and how we can untether ourselves from the entrapments of a blood-sucking capitalist system that we're in. And we're watching the carcass start to kind of bloat and collapse in on itself. And right now, it's becoming very evident that we're in the kind of early stages of we're in societal discontent, but it sort of feels so close to collapse.
Yeah, there's endings going on. There's endings going on all kinds of levels.
Yeah, and so how does one behave in that? Well, for me, it's like as far outside the system as one could possibly be without, living in a hedge, and which sometimes I wonder might be better. I don't know. And so
living on the hedge.
Living on the hedge. Yeah. Riverford got the wrong brand there with Life on the Veg.
That's it. Life
on the hedge.
Life on the hedge.
All right, I'm going to borrow that for something.
Have it. Take it. It's life. It's all,
I'm just going to.
Life's all a big remix, isn't it? At the end of the day,
it is. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. So I sort of like, a bit of me is like constantly feeling so grateful for living in a fucked up world, because when you feel so renegade and transgressive by doing all the naughty things and going on trespasses and living this kind of wild, sort of off-grid and slightly illegal existence. And in some ways, like, that's my practice more than meditatively walking through the woods at 6 o'clock in the morning. Fuck, 6 o'clock in the morning. I hate that hour. I'd much rather walk at night, actually, in the woods. That's my great joy. But finding those margins, finding where, all this crap I've just been talking about, and, the sort of the communities that I look for and I feel so sort of grateful to know and be part of. And Bristol's a big, big part of that.
I'm technically Bath.
Oh, are you? Or it's half a day's walk.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. 10 minutes on the train.
Yeah. The bits of nature that exist in the same way I'm fascinated by, and they're the true survivors, and that's where the beauty shines really brightly. It's the edge dwellers, in fact, it's ecologically speaking, it's those margins that are always the most fertile, the most biodiverse. And I think I'm exploring that as much in the same way, musically and culturally. It's about finding those bits that have been forgotten and discarded and actually revealing the treasure on the doorstep. That's what gets me excited.
Yeah, it's I was just thinking as you're speaking about the your new album. I've been listening to the 2 tracks that you've put out. The through bushes and through briars, which I felt is a lot in that song. It brings up quite a lot of grief for me. But yeah, there's a line where you say through bushes and through briars, eventually we stray, and I that's sort of like, yeah. So I think that feels very sort of alive, that wandering. But can we speak a little bit to Songdreaming and what's where it's coming from? I mean, you've sort of obviously it's very, for you, it's a culmination of where you are right now. But I mean, you said it's an album that's very much rooted in the living world. I mean, the bushes and through briars. You speak to like the small bird, right? And I'm troubled in my mind. Sometimes I think we've gone too far to turn it all around in time. Sometimes I'm plagued by all I should and must and what will leave behind. So for me, it was a lot of sort of. I felt quite a lot of this moment of what we spoke to, this overwhelm, right, of the beauty and the possibility, and then both this kind of loss.
Sometimes I'm uneasy and troubled in my mind. Sometimes I think we've gone too far to turn it round in time. Sometimes I'm playing.
Well, I'll talk to you about that song because it's one of the couple of dark ones on the album, and there has too many shades and there's a lot of brightness and a lot.
But
of
it's
joy
beautiful as well. I mean, it's a beautiful song. I mean, it opens the heart. But as grief and love do, right? They're much the same.
Sure, sides of the same coin. And the folk song originally, Bushes and Briars, is a kind of pastoral lament of an abandoned lover, and I realized that there was this kind of metaphor going on within the song. I've rewritten the lyrics, but I've actually kept it much to the same tune. It was collected by Vaughan Williams in 1906. It was one of the first folk songs he ever recorded. And it had quite a profound impact on him and thus the kind of trajectory of British folk and British classical music as well, and what it turned Vaughan Williams into as a song collector and composer, creating anthems for our time, for our country. So there's something very about the significance of that folk song historically, but also how I've recapitulated it to be about essentially my relationship with a very particular bird, the nightingale, which is a bird that I spend 7 weeks living with, and leading concerts with, and the quality of being in the space of that bird, this exquisite, beautiful song. And actually, Vaughan Williams said of the folk song is that he'd never heard a folk song, but it was as though he'd known it all its life, that song. And it's a comment that I hear regularly from people hearing Nightingales for the first time, which is like, it's a bird song unlike any other. And it's so exotic and alien, but at the same time, it's like we've always known it because we have ancestrally, we've always known Nightingale. Nightingale has just been part of our culture for thousands and thousands of years, as long as we've evolved. And yet, so I sit in this place of sort of what I call the palliative care, this work with a bird that I know is fast going extinct in this country. It's, it's a red list endangered, critically endangered. And I will likely in my lifetime hear the last nightingale sing. And that is a traumatic idea of seeing something that should be forever come to an end. It's unquantifiable. It's beyond what humans have had to experience, apart from the quaternary extinction 20,000 years ago. I can't remember, whatever. Humans haven't really experienced that on such a level. And so this is a song about this reckoning, the reckoning that we're facing of something so momentous, and yet it's so subtle and so quiet. And it's just a matter of a bird singing and a bird not singing, because that's all we can sense and all we'll know. And so this song is about that sense of joy and adoration, abandonment, a little bit like the old folk song. It's about that sense of abandonment, like a lover is leaving them. And we are part of that relationship being destroyed. So it's got so much in there, and that the lyrics are trying to borrow from the old folk song and adapt it and written anew in such a way that actually takes some of those archaic and sort of time-honored sentiments that humans have been singing about, the sense of loss, the sense of grief, whether it's, from a mother or a child or, or a society or a religion or a concept or whatever. The emotions are not changing. It's just the facts behind what provokes them that is becoming ever more magnified, I should say.
I mean, gosh, there's a lot that comes up listening to you, and I guess for thinking about for listeners, because there's two things. There's the particularly that have come up. There's the song collecting element of your work, which I would love to know a little bit more, or for listeners to know, because I know that there's lots. This idea even of collecting songs, and you've done a lot of work traveling around this country or these islands, as far as I know, and trying to collect these songs which have always been passed on through generation, and which is speaking to this timelessness thing that I think we're talking about. And again, what I find in these times, this I think is so difficult for many of us, is we don't really have these connections to place, or through ancestors and generations. We've kind of lost a lot of that, and I think all this stuff is interconnected, right? This separation, this disconnection, this sort of severance we've had of who we are and our place here, wherever we find ourselves. So there's the song collecting work that you've been doing, and obviously then the singing with Nightingales. And I know you've spoken a lot about this. It's something you've been doing for many years, and but I'm curious. Even with that, I know you're going again this year. Are you noticing now the shifts? Because I know you do them in a couple of parts of the country, but are and obviously that tells us a lot, right? That there's very few places to. But are you seeing, even in the time you've been doing this, that they are that they're losing numbers or whatever? So I know two things there, but I'd love it if you could speak a bit to those.
Well, I'll just speak about the Nightingales because it's they're so contiguous. This idea of are the nightingales shrinking in their habitat? Are the folk songs shrinking in their habitat? Yes, they're doing it at the same rate, for the same reasons, because cultural, societal, environmental conditions are all interconnected. So they're not separate things. And I think that's why you put them together. And it's fascinating because I think we do separate them out. And the work I did in the field finding folk songs was no different from me going out and finding nightingales, even though I'm actually with the Nightingales. I go to one place and that's where I stay. I'm not gallivanting around trying to find nightingales. The site we have in Sussex, which is our kind of base camp, which is where we are every week, it's from mid-April through to end of May. The population there is pretty stable. It's generally on the up, actually, which is completely contrary to national trends. We don't have that much up-to-date evidence, but what I do hear anecdotally and firsthand is people regularly saying, we had a nightingale in the field there for the last few years, but actually hasn't sung last year and it didn't come back this year. And the RSPB Hineham Woods Reserve, every year I go back there, I'm like, please, some nightingales, please. And every year the population is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It was 12 when I first got there, then it was 6 the next year, then it was 5, then 4, then, and we've only got a certain amount of time left in that site, and that's the kind of general trend as the range shrinks down. Some areas are expanding because of good conservation work, but we're having these bottlenecks and OHCs, as little oases of bird which can't sustain, that populations need to be interconnected. And it's the same with folk songs as well. And this was it, is that, the folk song collecting work that I did was about trying to kind of scoop up the little bits of material there were since the rains had stopped, sort of things. The puddles of song grew smaller and smaller. I was just there trying to sample what was out there within the Gypsy Traveller communities, Irish Traveller, Scots Traveller, and English Gypsy. And, I can count on one hand the number of English Gypsy singers there are and Scottish Travellers within one hand who still have the songs. The Irish Travellers, there's still a little bit of the oral tradition left and remaining, but most of the big repertoires within singers has gone. Those singers have died. And those are songs that go back thousands of years, some of them, if not a lot of them, centuries and centuries, and were prevalent. That was the common song. And alas, their purpose and their need and their appreciation has disappeared and is irrelevant. They're irrelevant now. And for many good reasons, I wouldn't want them to sort of be singing the old songs just for the sake of tradition and posterity. We've got bigger issues to think about those people, and they have a very, very hard time. And I think the part of the collecting songs was about showing a sense of cultural worth and value to a people that are treated with such contempt and such bad attitudes that this country has. They're so pariahed and they're so excluded, and I just have every sympathy for them, for what they've had to do to survive, to be resilient. And I think there's something in the way that we behave with travellers that's going to be a little bit of a blueprint of how we behave with each other when things get even tougher.
Yeah. Well, there's something, isn't there, you're touching on as well about probably those in our cultures who are probably much better placed to be dealing with what's coming down the line as well, and how to sort of how to kind of respond to how to become more resilient when there's not a lot around, and do you know what I mean? I remember you. I can't remember what I heard you speaking, but you were talking about that tradition of these songs being passed down through generations as a form of keeping these stories alive. And I think it was the arrival of the TV or something that kind of like
the portable television.
And it's fascinating because I'm seeing at the moment, I mean, I years ago did a lot of work on sort of British kids kind of disconnection from the living world, mainly through all these things, from all kinds of issues, but mobile technologies and social technologies obviously emerging at that time, and obviously that's a battle that we all face. But it's just interesting now, like this thing's blown up. I think the last couple of weeks there's a whole movement now for sort of trying to smartphones and kids, but it's just the way that they're speaking to it is the same thing as they're talking about a loss. They're talking about a loss of a childhood, a loss of exploration, creativity, joy, all these things. And it just strikes me again. There's this pattern that we keep repeating, which is just this separation again. I think that's sort of going on. But anyway, sorry, I'm a bit of a ramble there. But
no, I'm totally with you. Yeah. And it's, just kind of going back to like, how does music figure in all this, and why do I do it through music? Why do I think music is so vital in this? Is that it's one of the oldest forms of, well, I think the thing that I'm Songdreaming, to answer your previous question, is really about, is this kind of idea of how do we bring music in the sense of ceremonial, personal, directed, but also collaborative way that we connect to the land. And actually it's kind of laughed at. It's a laughable thing, this idea of Songdreaming. It's a kind of neologism that I've created as a kind of British version of the song line or the dream time. So a quality that we have had for sure in this country for a very long time and has been crushed and destroyed. And we're just seeing the last remains of that through folk song evaporate. So we're in this kind of interesting time of complete separation from the ancient world. So now's the time to reimagine actually what can that relationship be like when one puts aside cynicism and, embarrassments and that sort of thing. Actually, how has song been such a vital part of our connection process and our allegiance to the land, of which it is so strongly in so many cultures still to this day.
Yeah.
That's like that's a really powerful idea if we're able to start to kind of connect in with what does that as a prayer, what does music as a prayer, and how can we use our folk songs and adapt because they've been secularized so much, but actually start to rethink about them as a means to communicate and to tune in, as kind of blueprints, as maps, as guidance, as orientation to our own personal, individual senses of correspondence and journeys into loving nature, and also duty of responsibility and care that comes with that.
There are two stories on Spaceship Earth, a passenger story and a crew story. The passenger story is based on extraction, transaction and distraction, and it's leading us towards collapse. The crew story is based on connection, cooperation and participation. It leads towards regeneration.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
Yeah, it's like songs as connectors to the sacred. You were talking about song lines and that's what I'm sensing with Songdreaming, and it's interesting. I mean, I remember years ago sort of doing a kind of an experiment down in Dartmoor with a great teacher. In fact, I think you do some stuff with him, Chris Salisbury.
Dear friend of mine, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did a year's training with Chris on his first Call of the Wild, and he one weekend he got us exploring song lines as just as an experiment to sort of like in this patch of woodland that we were in, to form in small groups and to kind of like create some song lines, around this part of the wood for a few hours, and then to kind of perform them back to everyone. And it was just like, it was, and you can still remember it. I can still call on that, even though it was a tiny little patch. But it forces you, and I don't mean force in a negative way, but it pulls your attention into the detail and the feeling of the place and the sort of, you know what I mean? It's a more of an embodied way of starting to think about where you are, what's around you, and how to speak to it, or what's coming through you even, and then how to remember that. And again, my head always jumps between this and then the kind of the context we're in right now. And I'm thinking like everyone's walking around with these, Google Maps, and it's like, we don't really know where we are half the time, and or what's sort of around us. And there's something really beautiful about this the song to help us actually sort of cross that that portal almost into that way of being. And so I'm sensing that Songdreaming is sort of around that.
Well, it's more than around that, and I can't believe you bring up Chris, because Chris and me run a retreat together, and we called it Songdreaming, and that's where the album title came from. So it was a name that the two of us crafted together in some ways as a practice, and from that practice comes this kind of concept and kind of wider idea and concept that has turned into music. And the lead single of the album, Meeting is a Pleasant Place, was the anthem of our two. We've done it twice this year. We might be doing it again this year. It was the kind of anthem of of our work, because this is a Devonshire song originally, and it just became everything that we were about. And I've written more into it and that sort of thing, but we just use those verses as our mantra.
Beautiful. Songdreaming opens wonder paths. Yeah, I love that. Chris has been on the podcast years ago, actually.
Has he?
Yeah. That's so lovely to hear. I think couldn't see it, but now you're speaking to it. It's like I can feel a little bit of Chris here.
He is all around us.
Oh, amazing. It's all of this. I was actually on a Zoom thing last night, which was with it was a gathering with I don't know if you've come across Vanessa Andreetti, Hospicing Modernity. She had this gathering with an Amazonian chief that they've been working with. I think I got his name right. Ninawa Huniku.
Ninawa. Yeah. I know Ninawa.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was talking about this project that they have been developing called University of the Forest. And they're talking about, they call it the disease of separation. But very much talking about, I think their frame was, that land is also our bodies. And so that these westernized cultures have had this fractured relationship coming at every level, and sort of this idea of how do we learn to sort of, I think they were using the phrase like thinking with our bodies, and again sort of bringing in sound, and so this idea of sound and song becomes sort of an intervention in not in a sort of a clinical way, but almost maybe what we need are these interventions, which I think was what obviously culture and creativity and arts and music can do. So more than, we can't think our way into this stuff. And that's half the problem, I think, because we're sort of being met with all of these issues and trying to sort of rationally think our way out of them. So that's just it's just interesting that I can be in a Zoom conversation last night with this and then speaking with you, and we're moving around that, we're pulling on the same threads here, and and their thing was how to bring this relational way of experiencing the world into Western societies, because obviously that's where they see the sickness.
It's so good to hear, and it's we've exactly the same thing in some ways. I'm not an indigenous elder. I'm not from the Huniquin tribe. I'm not from. We don't have that same concept here in the UK, and our relationship to what sovereignty to the land and thus indigeneity means is highly complex and political and debated and dangerous subject, but also it's vital because it's the same thing that if we don't have a sense of relationship or adoration, how can we speak on behalf of, as voices of the forest, of protectors, which we do have, we have an incredible silviculture here, and people who live in such wonderful relationship to woods and devotionally and practically, and have subsist. And we have parties that are trying to destroy and uproot and cut down. So I think there's a lot to learn from Ninawa and others like that in terms of where their sense of power comes from, and how we can actually start to recognize that some of the things that he speaks about on behalf of his community are very close to us. These are that we're having the same issues.
Yeah, it's it's also reminding me of I think Paul Powsand actually came on the podcast last year, but he was saying, well, what if indigeneity, we saw it as a verb rather than a noun? It's like that actually, like, it doesn't really matter where you're from, but wherever you are right now, like, it's like, love that place, and everything within it, and what is it like to practice that? Which I loved, because again, in this sort of binary sort of divisiveness of we have around place and others, and many of us haven't had those roots of place, but in this kind of, decaying, collapsing, emerging mess that we sort of find ourselves in, this is a time to begin to root, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm so pleased to bring Paul. Paul's pretty much my best pal, and you have you're my favourites on your podcast, obviously. And Paul's just, for me, the glorious example of that irreverential, but such generosity, and his idea of the positive feedback. How can we have the best fun and leave the place that we're having fun in a more enriched and nourished way? And his positive feedback parties and that concept, and also he's a very smart man. He's a barrister, he's a lawyer, but he's also an activist. One of the Right to Roam founders, and that I share with him as being one of the team in there of that project, are really like trying to break down some of the fundamental societal barriers and legal barriers that have got us into such mess in this country, and are also foundational in the kind of the legacy of empire. So more Paul Powslands needed.
That's what I always say. You watch what Paul does on his own, and you're like, I mean, how can I went and did a session with him on his boat, and he gave me a tour of the roading and the work they'd been doing.
Yeah.
And, but then you see, like, I think the day before or something, I was just checking, and he was like, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm up a tree at the moment, and the police are surrounding it, and can we speak a bit later? And it was like,
I remember that moment. Yeah.
He's just, he's sort of, so we'd say, like, exemplary crew member on Spaceship Earth, and we need more of Paul.
Exactly.
So tell us about this year. The album's coming out next month, right? Well, March. Is it mid-March, or is it? Yep,
March 15th. I'll be straight on tour for that as well. I'll be touring right through till middle of April. I'm going to be in Bristol.
Yeah, we've got tickets. We've got tickets to come see you in Bristol.
Fab.
All the family. We're all coming.
Oh, great. I get to meet all the Burgesses.
A lot of us. A lot of us.
Brilliant. I'm pleased to hear. So I can't remember what date it is. I'll be in Bristol. I think it's the 27th. Yeah.
It's my partner's 50th birthday.
Oh, no way. What a miserable way to spend your 50th birthday listening to me whinge. And then from the 11th of April, I'm into the Nightingales till end of May. And then it's, summer onwards. So, welcome anybody to come to any of the shows and come and meet the Nightingales in the woods. It is just one of the most sublime experiences. It really is.
No, we'll link out to that, because that's Nest Collective, isn't it? That is your.
It is actually best thing to go through singwithnightingales.co.uk, which is, as of this week, the sort of brand new website.
Amazing.
That has everything up there. I'm sort of taking the Nightingales in a slightly sort of like on its own journey.
Okay.
But we can talk about that another time.
Yes, no, indeed. So listen, we always we have this story of the spaceship Earth we're exploring, and it's very much just a metaphor for the story of separation. We sort of figure out you're either a passenger on this thing and sort of blissfully unaware of this living world around us, and caught up in the kind of distraction and transaction and extraction of modernity, or you're sort of stepping into a kind of crew mode and beginning this kind of re-entanglement and looking how to sort of connect with ourselves, with each other, with this beautiful natural world that's with us, and become an active participant in trying to bring on these different ways of being, which we're being called to. So we always close the episode just by asking, if you sort of think about that passenger crew story, how does this invitation we call becoming crew, what does speak to you at this moment, Sam? What does it bring up?
Oh, what does it mean to be crew?
And we use becoming because we see it as a sort of, it's an ongoing evolution.
Yeah. I like this. I think firstly it's about, and I'm trying to relate this in a very practical grassroots sort of way. And I'm also thinking this very much from the Bristol point of view, which has birthed this idea, becoming crew idea. It feels like such a of your land. And how can that spread? How can that idea of the concepts of what does communality mean? How can we work in ways, live and exist in ways that collectively we're supporting a much more wholesome, ecologically just, nature enriched world? And what are the things that how do we find our role, our place? Becoming crew isn't for me about just becoming one of the drones and showing up in uniform match. It's not. It's about finding your sublime role within the tapestry of community, of what you can bring or what you carry, but also how you are there as creating a sense of the container and also the and the vessel and the support network. That's what I think it is. I think it's about care and duty, where arms are open up for each other and thinking about others' needs. I grew up in an organization called Forest School Camps, which is very, very Bristol focused. And there's always been that concept that I've grown up with there, which is that if you take care of everybody else's needs, your needs in turn will be looked after. And I've always been very nourished by that, because it's something that I see is such a healthier way of existing. If we're thinking about our fellow brothers and sisters and community, actually we are so looked after. So that's what I think becoming crew means. Maybe it's just a bit of a ramble.
That's beautiful, because thank you for that. So I guess the other thing we ask is, like, in the spirit of becoming crew and participation and stepping up into this moment, is there something you might offer our listeners? It could be a sort of an invitation, it might be a provocation, it might be a practice, anything that is a kind of invitation, I guess, for listeners to take with them, maybe something they might want to play with out in the world. I think it's such a big one, and I think I'm going to return to the nature one. And you were touching on it earlier, this idea of our broken relationship societally, but on an individual level, I've often thought about what is my relationship with nature. Like if nature was my lover, which in many ways nature is, but like all relationships, there's good and bad times, and there's moments of exquisite beauty and connection, and there are times where there isn't. And thinking a little bit about where are the times where that has been so potent, and what were the conditions for that, and how does one find a way of maintaining an access to that and a practice of it, and what can one do that dispels the sense. I mean, the whole trespass movement I love, because it's this invisibling of the boundary of the barbed wire, and how can we exist in nature as if we had full legal permission. And that's I think a practice that works really beautifully, is to untangle all the complex inherited senses of good and bad, right and wrong, allowed, not allowed, and to imagine what a
a really untethered way of being, you know, nature enriched could be, and go out and do that role play and pretend and exist as if. And it's phenomenal what happens when you kind of, play with that sense of, permission.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sam. So, on that, I'm conscious of time. You're a busy man. You're preparing for a tour. But yeah, just to say thank you again. Just a big appreciation for all that you do.
Pleasure.
And all that you offer out to us in our culture. And go well this year. I'm really looking forward to seeing the album land and perform live. And I think we've got. I actually bought tickets for the Nightingales session just before we got just before lockdown. Do you remember? You had to cancel them all. It was in the pandemic.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But I think,
sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I mean, it's pandemic, right?
I hope we refunded you.
yeah, it's all good. But no, I think we shall make an effort to try and make that this year because it looks amazing. Been wanting to go for a long time, but and we'll link to all your work for folks to find you.
Thank you.
But yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Oh, cheers, Darren. It's lovely to chat and all that we have in common as well. It's amazing, people being here.
Great big entanglement of stuff going on, isn't there? As ever, as life is. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sam. What an amazing human he is. But check out Sam's music. Songdreaming coming out next month. And if you haven't discovered his other music, there's 3 other albums out there. He's on tour. Go and see him if he's coming near you. Singing with Nightingales. I mean, what an incredible thing that is. If you can get to go, that would be an extraordinary treat, and something, by the sounds of things, that is not going to be possible for that long. Now I'm going to play out with a track, and obviously I'm going to play out with one of Sam's tracks. But before I do that, I want to just give 2 messages to you to take on board. The first one is our flagship unlearning course, the remix that we offer through Becoming Crew, is now open for applications. We ran the first cohort last year. We're going again this year. It's a 6-month course. It starts in May. It will fit in around whatever it is you are doing in the world. We're pouring everything into it. We're very excited. It's online and on land. There's an on land element. There's a weekend camping. There's an overnight solo that we offer you if you want it. And then there's a 6-month program to develop your creative practice in service to life during these times. We've got some amazing guests. It's going to be a really, really special experience. But applications are open. I'll link in the show notes. But if you're feeling the call to really step into these times and point your energies, your creative energies, at the composting of this story of separation that's causing so much damage to the earth, to ourselves, to each other, the way that we treat each other, then this remix unlearning adventure could be for you. It's deep. It has a very much a transformative potential. And the applications are open. So if you want information, the links in the show notes, and you also find it off becomingcrew.substack.com or off becomingcrew.com. So that's the remix. Get in touch if you're curious. The second thing is, just again, if you're enjoying what we're doing here, if you got something out of that episode, if you are into this whole mission that we're on, just either sign up to the Substack. You'll get all of these episodes and updates and news and writing from us into your inbox. If you want to offer a paid subscription, that would be amazing to help us support the ongoing costs and time to do this work. And if you can't do any of that, then just if you just want to just share something here or comment on the Substack about something that's come up for you, or pass this on to a friend that you think might enjoy what we're doing. All of this is unbelievably helpful, and we need it. We need more participation from our listeners and the community that's building around this podcast and the Becoming Crew work. It matters. It really helps. The more that we seed these stories, the different ideas, different conversations, different ways of thinking and acting around what is going on in these times that we're living in, this stuff matters. So your support, your interactions, your actions are needed. So yes, that's just an invitation to say whatever you can do, please do. So I'm going to play out with that track from Sam. It's called Meeting is a Pleasant Place. I think this is a potential. This is a beautiful, beautiful song. It's anthemic, really. So I urge you to take this song out, walk with it, play it loud in your kitchens, run with it, get out onto the landscapes around you. And it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And let's spread it far and wide. Let's seed it out. And maybe see it as an invitation to open up as you're walking, as you're strolling the lands that you live in, the edges that we talked about. What might you notice? What might be there? What might be wanting your attention? So yes. Thanks so much for listening. It's much appreciated. Look after yourself out there. Until next time, peace and out.
This podcast is created in service to life, for you. It takes time, funds and energy to make. If you'd like to contribute to the running costs, you can donate the price of a cuppa or a pint. Find the link on our website. This podcast wouldn't exist without the following crew: Charlie Shred, Audio Jedi; Seaman Home Burgess, Engine Room; Willow Burgess, Jingles.
Meeting is a pleasant place between my love and I'll go down to yonder's valley. It is there I will sit and sing. I'll sit and sing for you, my love, from morning, noon till night. And from morning, noon till night, my love, it is there I will sit and sing. Time draws circles round our lives. Put your arms round me. Measure England's miles with me, oh friend. Our walk is our release. For meeting is a pleasant place between my love and I go down to yonder's valley. It is there I will sit and sing. What will your fourscores foresee? From your mountains down to your sea. Songdreaming opens wonder paths, enchants us your melody. For meeting is a pleasant place between my love and I. Go down to yonder's valley. It is there I will sit and sing. I'll sit and sing for you, my love, from morning noon till night, and from morning noon till night, my love. It is there I will sit and sing. May the sun warm gently on your face, the wind blow from behind, the ground be soft in her embrace, and all you meet be kind. Meeting is a pleasant place between my love and I. Sing for you, my love, from morning, noon till night, and from morning, noon till night, my love. It is there I will sit and sing.